Hello, everybody. I'm Jody Johnston-Powell, licensed social worker, certified family life educator, and creator of the Universal Blueprint Personalized Parenting Plan and author of the Parents Tool Shop. And today we have a webinar on trigger-free parenting. So let me switch over to my desktop, or I should say I'll add the desktop. And I'm going to go ahead and keep folks on mute and take questions at the end if there are any. So again, hello and welcome to the webinar. I'm Jody Johnston-Powell, and today's topic is stress-free parenting. So today, what we're going to be covering are, here we go. Doesn't seem to be changing. Here we go. You're going to be glad that you attended this workshop if your children tend to push your buttons, if you keep falling into old habits despite your good intentions and efforts to be a more positive parent, if you get annoyed, irritated, or angry more often or more intensely than you'd like, or if you would like to get rid of your trigger buttons so that you can parent more consciously and confidently. In today's webinar, you will discover some shocking new brain research that reveals just how those parenting habits and trigger buttons got wired in. Some surprising effects that anger and stress can have on your health and relationships, and a 5-step formula for reprogramming or even eliminating your trigger buttons. Normally, this training module is only offered in the Advanced T.I.P.S online course, and T.I.P.S stands for Tools for Improving Parenting Success. But today only, I'm offering this to everybody because I think it's really great information, and I've been sharing this information in pretty much all of my workshops, certainly the beginning part of it, and people have really just wanted more. So I'm going to be referencing some scientific research. It comes from multiple scientists, not just those that are listed, but the resource that I got it out of references the 3 scientists that are listed on the screen there: Dr. Bruce Lipton, Biology of Belief; Dr. Joe Dispenza, author of Your Immortal Mind; and Dr. Candace Pert, author of Molecules of Emotion. So let's get started. So before you can be trigger-free, you first have to understand how your trigger buttons get programmed in the first place. Now, I did do an entire webinar on this topic, and it's in the training area. So I'm just going to do a brief recap here for those of you who haven't seen that more detailed webinar. You actually have 2 minds that are separate entities, and they operate differently. The conscious mind is responsible for logic, reasoning, creative thinking, and anything else you intentionally do in a conscious way. So right now, you're using your conscious mind to pay attention and listen to this webinar. The subconscious mind is responsible for recording experiences and then replaying them at the push of a button. That button being trigger buttons or beliefs that you have programmed in. So while you're listening with your conscious mind to this webinar, your subconscious mind is replaying constantly beliefs that you already have and believe to be true. So if anything that I were to say were to trigger these beliefs that you have, and those beliefs are different from what I'm saying, you're going to have this little voice in the back of your mind saying, "Ooh, I don't think that's true," or "Ooh, I don't want to hear that," or "I don't believe that." Doesn't mean that what's being presented isn't accurate and true, but it's going through this filter of your subconscious mind. So it's helpful to understand how the subconscious mind works, because it actually doesn't record your experiences in a factual way. It pays special attention to how you interpret the experiences that you have. So then it uses those beliefs to screen and interpret any new events that you experience in a way that makes those stories true. And that's because the subconscious mind and the brain's function in the subconscious mind is to accurately create the programming that it already has. In other words, the mind always wants to be right, so it will filter anything you experience through your belief system, and it will present it to you according to your beliefs, not according to maybe the accuracy or truth of what actually happened. And this is why two people could be in the same situation and interpret it or experience it differently. So as a result, when an event happens, it's actually your belief about the event that determines how you interpret the meaning of the event. How you feel about it is based on your belief, and then how you feel is usually how you respond. This reaction process is something that we cover in the Keep Your Cool tool set in the Parents Tool Shop curriculum, and it's based on Albert Ellis's cognitive behavioral therapy. So most of us operate in this more reactive mode where an event happens and then our thoughts, our feelings, and response are a reaction to that event based upon our beliefs. And so what we teach in the Parents Tool Shop is how to kind of reprogram those. But what we're going to take a look at today is more what really happens under the surface in your body, in your subconscious mind, when that event triggers the reaction, because it's really important for you to understand what's actually happening so that you can then change that and create much more happiness for yourself. So here's the really crazy part about how this programming gets in. Scientists did some studies into brainwave research, and what they found is that children ages 0 to 6 have a brainwave frequency that's about the same as adults in a hypnotic trance. So if you think about that, adults who are under hypnosis are open to the power of suggestion. They can't really like cancel things out. It's a great way to actually reprogram the subconscious mind by reprogramming it at that subconscious level. So children, because their brain waves are in that very receptive state and they aren't old enough, they aren't at that age of logic yet where they can filter things, whatever they see, hear, and experience gets programmed directly into the subconscious mind without any filters or any reasoning. Now, also from ages 0 to 6, children are in a stage of development that has a characteristic called egocentric. And what that means is that they view their world as though they are the center of it. And this isn't a selfish, self-centered, negative kind of a thing. It's actually very important for children in developing a concept of self. And, as they get older, their world grows in terms of what they're aware of. And in our other workshops, my other workshops around developmental stages, unintentional misbehavior, age-appropriate misbehavior, there's more information about child's development. What's really relevant today, though, is that because they view everything as from this egocentric sense, the way that they interpret and filter their experiences is very much related to that they are the center of what's happening. So whatever people say or do or whatever children experience, it usually gets interpreted in ways such as whatever happened was my fault, I'm responsible for this happening, whatever this is, it's all about me. And even if what they're experiencing is very dysfunctional or abusive, if that's all that they really experience and that's the bulk of what they experience, that becomes their norm. And until their world becomes bigger and they really start seeing how other people live, and sometimes this might not happen until they're in school or even an adult, they'll believe that this is their normal. So during this time of subconscious programming, obviously it's pretty clear that it's really important what we do with children at that age. But here's the kicker. Whatever that programming is, it doesn't go away. It then becomes the foundation and the basis of your belief system and your perception of reality throughout your entire life. And researchers estimate that when you look at how much the conscious mind is operating versus the subconscious mind, they actually find that the conscious mind is only operating about 1 to 10% of the time, but the subconscious mind is operating anywhere from 90 to 99% of the time. And that's because even while you're consciously paying attention to something, your subconscious mind is still operating. And you want to guess which of those two will win out if they're in conflict? It will almost always be the subconscious mind because that's your direct programming. And the conscious mind is just trying maybe to cancel that out or no, you know, I want to believe this. I want to do this. I want to be a better parent. I want to stay calm in this situation. But you have subconscious programming that's conflicting with that. And your subconscious programming will always win out. So this is why it's so important to understand trigger buttons. So these beliefs then become your subconscious programming. They filter everything you experience, and so those filtered perceptions become your perception of reality. And so beliefs about parenting and children that are part of this belief system then become the basis of your parenting style. And these beliefs and experiences can create trigger buttons that you might have that your children can push. So let's take a look at what happens when those trigger buttons get pushed. What's actually happening under the surface? Because you feel something and you may visibly have a reaction to it, but it's important for you to understand what actually created that reaction in the first place. So back to this sequence. So when an event happens, you interpret that event. That belief is a thought. When you have a thought, it creates an electrical impulse that fires through the nerve synapses, through your nervous system. The first place that message is sent to is the hypothalamus, which is kind of like the message relay center of the brain. The hypothalamus then sends out messages to many different parts of your body to create the experience the thought or belief has told it to. And it does this by creating biochemical neurotransmitters, or what Dr. Candace Pert calls the molecules of emotion. So your body assembles and pumps these biochemicals through your body via your bloodstream. And just like an alcoholic cocktail follows a recipe, there's a unique biochemical combination for every emotion that you experience. So if you believe you should feel angry, then your body will create biochemicals and send messages to your body to create the physical feeling of anger. If you believe you should feel jealousy, then your body will create biochemicals and send messages to your body to create the feeling of that emotion. And the same is true for lust and shyness and any other emotion, whether or not it's a more healthy or toxic or positive or negative. And of course, positive and negative is a judgment, but any kind of emotion at all, it will create a corresponding biochemical cocktail and send that throughout your bloodstream to your body so you experience or you feel that emotion. So when these biochemicals reach your cells, they lock in to docking stations. And these docking stations are places on your cell that deliver biochemical messages. And so this is what really causes the feeling of emotions. It literally has an effect on your cellular structure by delivering those chemicals to the cell. Now, here's the crazy thing about this process is that the brain doesn't know the difference between what's happening now or what it imagines for the future or remembers from the past. From the mind standpoint, it's all real. And so it doesn't matter if you're really experiencing a new event or if you're recalling an old one. It's going to trigger the same biochemical process. So this is why you can feel a shiver down your spine just thinking about a spider crawling on your face, even though that's not really happening. Or maybe it's never happened. But if I were to describe to you the feel of a spider crawling on your face, just the thought of that would cause shivers down your spine, a physiological biochemical reaction to that thought. So here's what then happens. And this is where it goes from having an experience to programming in a trigger button. The physical feeling of that emotion then reminds you of the thought, belief, or story. The thought of a spider crawling, the belief that the spider can hurt you, the story of a time maybe when there was a spider really crawling on your face. So When you have that thought, belief, or story, and that physical feeling comes about, then that emotion reminds you of the thought, belief, or story, which then creates the emotion again, which then reminds you of the thought. And so this creates what Dr. Joe Dispenza calls a thought feeling loop. And so those times where you've had an experience that you kind of dwell on it or you stew on it, every time you do that, you're getting stuck in this thought feeling loop. And every time you do that, that biochemical change is happening to your body, and that subconscious program is getting replayed and replayed. You'll see why that's so important here. So the more that loop repeats, what it literally does is it starts creating new neural pathways or a new habitual way of thinking and feeling. What Dr. Joe Dispenza often says is neurons that fire together wire together. So if you fire that neural thought pattern, thought feeling loop often enough, it will start to create a new neural pathway. And this particular webinar doesn't support videos. If you are taking the advanced T.I.P.S course, we do have the video there for you to see of literally what it looks like when these nerve synapses are being created. So once there's actually this new neural pathway, then all it will take is a reminder or a trigger to start this mental and biochemical reaction again, and you'll start to have an outward reaction. So now that you know how those trigger buttons get activated, programmed in, and at what happens when they get activated. So now let's take a look at the effects of trigger buttons. And first, we'll take a look at the effects that you probably experience in your body. So your body's natural state is calm, peace, and joy. That is your natural state. Therefore, your body's cells are designed to absorb nutrients, protein, endorphins that make you feel happy. And the body is proven to be able to naturally heal itself if it has two important things. The first is that it receives proper nutrition, and the second is that it's devoid of toxins. And Dr. Joe Dispenza, if you go to his website, if you listen to any of his audios, his specialty is spontaneous healings. That's his area of specialty. He's done a lot of research. He has fascinating stories about spontaneous healing. So this is a proven fact. And actually, Dr. Bruce Lipton's Biology of Belief book also talks about the power of thoughts in being able to contribute to healing. And in the advanced T.I.P.S course, in the advanced module of the Keep Your Cool tool set, and that course is the only place you can get that. That's where you get more detail about that. And I explain a bit more, but we're on a more condensed website, but we're on a more condensed webinar today where I want to kind of go through the whole process, but at a little bit higher overview. So let's go and see what happens next in your body. So remember those docking stations that I had mentioned earlier? Well, these docking stations are designed to absorb those nutrients, proteins, amino acids, endorphins, hormones, those other hormones, that kind of thing. But when these emotional biochemicals that Dr. Candace Pert isn't the only one that calls them peptides, but she's the one I learned the word from. When those peptides or those molecules of emotions, those biochemical cocktails of emotions, when those reach the cell, they dock on the cell instead of the nutrients, proteins, amino acids, the other things that docking station was designed to absorb. So these biochemicals literally kind of enter and lock themselves in like a key. And then they deliver the biochemical peptide. And then that is what then causes that feeling of emotion. And depending upon the cell, that's why you'll feel some things in your heart and you might feel some things on your skin. And each of those cells, as they get that biochemical, responds in a way that's specific to that body part or that body system. So when that thought feeling loop happens repeatedly over time, then the cells in your body have to adapt to this repetitive bombardment of these emotional biochemicals and the body absorbing those through the docking stations instead of the nutrients. And so what happens is that this constant bombardment actually changes the cellular structure. So instead of having receptor cells or receptor sites that receive the nutrients, the proteins and the enzymes, it now has to mutate these receptor sites to accommodate all these emotional biochemicals that it's being fed instead. And so you can imagine this brings us then to, now that you understand the effects that the emotions have on your body, we want to take a look at what effect that has on the body. So positive emotions that match your body's natural state of joy, peace, and love will create biochemicals that will actually help heal the body. That's part of not having toxins in your body, not having toxic emotions, and if you're having proper nutrition, you're not getting toxins through your foods either. So what is it that happens when there are negative toxic emotions? So you remember that cell that had to mutate to adapt to being bombarded by toxic biochemicals? Well, as the cell changes, it grows and it splits. And the new cells will now have these mutated receptor cells so they can handle the emotional biochemicals that it's used to having. Now, over time, the cellular mutation will cause disease. And that's why you've probably heard that most diseases are related to stress. In fact, there are studies that have found that certain diseases can actually be directly traced to the type of biochemical cocktail that's produced by certain emotions and beliefs. And new information about genetic diseases is now coming to find. There's actually a new branch of science. It's not new in that it's been around for the last 20 years, but it's relatively speaking pretty new, and it's called epigenetics. And epigenetics actually means above the genes. And so about 20 years ago, and Dr. Bruce Lipton was one of the pioneering engineers in epigenetics. In fact, he's the one who coined the term. And it was discovered through stem cell research. So if you know about stem cells at all, stem cells are cells that have not received their genetic assignment yet. So depending upon what environment they are put in, that will determine what type of cell they turn into. So if they put a stem cell into a biochemical environment for hearts, it can turn into heart tissue, which can then be used for medical reasons. So what they began to realize is that not only would the stem cell start to turn into whatever that biochemical environment was, but if they moved it to a different biochemical environment, it would start to change to match the environment of that, to match the assignment of the new environment. And I won't even go into, there's even freakier stuff, like they moved the environments across the world. They would change one of the stem cells into a different environment, and there would be a corresponding reaction for the other stem cell that was part of the same tissue. And I won't go there because we're just doing the high-level overview. In the online tips course, we do go into more detail about, if you have any questions about exactly how that works. I've got more time in those live support calls that I do when you're taking it during a live support call bonus series. Then we can go into more detail and explain that a little bit more. So as a result of these epigenetics and understanding that heredity, they now understand, is actually programmed in based on the biochemical environment. And that biochemical environment is determined by your thoughts. So basically, your beliefs create the biochemical environment, which gives the cell the genetic assignment or changes it. And then the cells multiply, or you give birth to, you contribute genetic material to a new child. And so those genetic mutations and those genetic blueprints, the tendency is there. However, it is not a guarantee. So here's what they understand now is that we know now, scientists know now, that thoughts can actually change the directions they're sent to the DNA genetic blueprint. So you may have a tendency to have a genetic predisposition towards something, but it's actually the mind that will be the contractor to dictate what gets assigned to that gene. And so this is like, I mean, a lot of the things I'm talking about today, you could like dive into days, weeks, and months of further exploration. And in the online tips course, in the advanced keep your cool section module of that, I do give you some resources that you can check out after the course if this is an area you want to learn more about, because some of it's pretty mind-blowing. I know it blew my mind when I first learned about it. So now that you understand the effects of anger, stress, and emotions and the effect that they have on your body, let's take a look at the effect that your childhood programming, anger, stress, and trigger buttons can have on your parenting. First, let's look at your childhood programming. So in a lot of my workshops, particularly when I'm talking about parenting beliefs, I tell what I call the roasting pan story. And you might have heard it maybe told a little bit differently. So here's the way I tell the story. So I am a 7th grade girl, and I've just taken home ec. And in home ec, I learned how to make a roast, a beef roast, in my home ec class. And it turned out really, really good. And I learned the best way to do it. Well, on Sunday, we have a big family get-together, and my mom's there, my grandma's there, even my great-grandmother is there. And guess what's on the menu? Roast beef. So I go into the kitchen and offer to help my mom and say, hey, Mom, I just learned how to make roast beef. How about if I help with the roast beef? And my mom says to me, well, why don't you go cut the ends off and put it in the pan? And I look at her, and you know how 7th graders are. They know everything, especially if they learned it in school, and they love to correct their parents. But Mom, beef tips are the best part of the roast. Why would I cut that off? And my mother's response is, oh, honey, it's Grandma's recipe. Her roast always turned out perfect. And so, of course, for a 7th grade girl, that's not a good enough reason. I always have to ask further. So I go and I ask Grandma, Grandma, why do you cut the ends off of the beef before you put it in the pan? And she says, oh, honey, Grammy has the best roast beef recipe. It always turns out perfect. Well, since great grandma is in the other room, I go in and ask her, Grammy, why do you cut the ends off of the roast beef? And in her rocker, she says, oh, honey, back then I only had one pan and I had to cut off the ends of the roast to get it to fit. So the moral of this story is that there is a lot of practices, in that case cooking and recipes, but in our case when it comes to looking at intergenerational parenting practices, there are a lot of parenting practices and ways that we've always done things, and it seemed that kids turned out fine, that it originated from a very good reason, but today those circumstances no longer exist, or we have more information. So just as today we have more options for pans, so we can choose or buy a pan that's bigger and will fit the whole roast. We don't have to cut the ends off. It's very much the same with our parenting practices, but it's the subconscious programming that says, that's not the way we've always done it. In our family, in our culture, we've always done things this way, and we believe we've turned out okay. And just because we believe we turned out okay, it must mean it's okay to keep doing this. In parentheses, even if there's newer information, even more effective skills. So, maybe our roast could turn out even better. It doesn't mean the Grammy's recipe was bad. It was still good. But we can have a recipe of roast beef that includes the best part, which is the beef tips. Likewise, just kind of going through parenting and just doing what we've always done is not always the most effective. So that really brings us to the choice that each one of us needs to make. And that is, what kind of a mindset are you going to have about parenting? Because there's 3 kinds. And all of us have all of these to some extent. It's just a matter of which one we choose to develop more, or which one we choose, consciously or subconsciously, to stay in most of the time. The first one is conditioned parenting. And this is when you just kind of unconsciously act from your childhood programming and conditioning. It's like not even thinking about the fact that you're cutting the ends of the roast off the pan, the ends of the roast off before you put it in the pan. Reactive parenting, and most parents kind of stay in that conditioned parenting unless something happens and then they move into reactive parenting. And reactive parenting is when those trigger buttons that got programmed in childhood get triggered and you react based upon whatever that biochemical cocktail, trigger button programming, whatever it says you're supposed to do. It just happens, in a split second. You can go from 0 to, 150 being angry and stressed when these trigger buttons get triggered. The third type of parenting is what I think you want and make an effort to do, but these other two types of parenting keep interfering with, and that is conscious parenting. So conscious parenting is when you really become aware of your beliefs. You consciously choose what it is that you're doing in your parenting. You choose your thoughts, your words, your actions. And so a lot of times we have good intentions. We're very conscious. We try to pay attention to those things, but there are a couple of things that can get in the way. One is subconscious programming. Second is those trigger buttons. And the third is you want to maybe do something different or better, but you don't really know what to do. In which case you have the intention, you may even have the goal, but you really don't have the tools to reach that goal. So in order to really become a conscious parent that has more helpful programming, that is devoid or mostly devoid as much as you can of trigger buttons, because I think both of those are lifetime processes of cleaning up and self-improvement that we do in our lives, and being a more conscious and effective parent, it requires 5 steps or 5 parts. It's kind of the formula. The first is that you do need to have good intentions. In other words, you have to at least want to be more conscious and effective. However, good intentions really aren't good enough because your old subconscious programming and patterns are very ingrained, and they're ingrained at a subconscious level. You also have those trigger buttons that can throw you off your path. So what you need are the remaining pieces of this formula. You need to be able to know what your end goal is, and you do that by setting parenting goals. There's an exercise that I do in every class, including the online tips course, and it starts with us taking a look at what are the outcomes that we really want from our parenting, so that then we can be making conscious choices about the thoughts, words, and actions that we take that will give us the best chance of reaching those goals. And what goes along with that are learning skills that are specifically designed to reach those goals. So you also need a proven plan, because you can't just have a bunch of tools and then just randomly, use them. People think that you have to use trial and error in parenting, and you don't. When you have a proven plan for when and how to use the tools, then in a matter of seconds, you can look at a situation, know what's happening, and know exactly what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. And that's what the Universal Blueprint formula for parenting success gives you. Once you have those things, then it's a matter of just using consistent practice of practicing the skills and the plan, so that eventually what you're doing is, at the very least, on the conscious level, you're repatterning new behavior patterns, new parenting habits, that once they get wired in as a new neural pathway, those then become second nature and you don't have to think about them so much. So I would like to encourage you to take the Advanced Online Tips course, because it's going to give you all 5 of those parts of that formula that you need to really have trigger-free parenting. You start by setting your parenting goals and assessing whether or not your current parenting style is going to be the most effective one for helping you reach that goals. You will also, throughout the course, learn skills that help you reach that goals. And more importantly, you learn the full Universal Blueprint formula for effective parenting. You may have seen bits and pieces of it. Anytime you've come onto one of our done-for-you solution, Worst Parenting Nightmares Solved webinars, we give you a solution to a challenge. Our reference for that solution is the Universal Blueprint. And rather than teaching you the blueprint, we're just telling you, for this problem, here's how you would use it. So these done-for-you solutions will help you solve that problem, and it will be step-by-step exactly what to say and do. But truthfully, we all here at Parents Tool Shop, myself, all of our direct service providers included, we are really committed to serving you in a much deeper way. And that's to empower you to think for yourself so that you can be in any situation with your child and know exactly what to say and do in a matter of seconds. So let me just give you a brief overview of how the Advanced Online Tips course fills that five-step, that five-part formula that was on the previous screen. You start by setting the foundation for your parenting, and you do that by taking a deeper look at that conscious parenting style tool set, that conscious parenting mindset. Then you're going to balance your parenting style. Then you're going to get the proven plan for when and how to use the skills. And so that's the universal blueprint. And it consists of an effective formula that involves answering 3 questions and following 5 steps. When you know how to answer the questions and which steps to take and what to do at each step, then in a matter of seconds, you can look at any situation and you can come up with a personalized plan, an effective response that is customized to your child, that moment in that situation, and it will be able to fit within your rules and your values of your family. You will then go on, and the bulk of the class is the practical skills that you can use. So the first group are the prevention toolbox. There's 5 key tools that are the most important for parents to learn. The prevention toolbox has 4 of those 5 5-star tools, as we call them. One helps you build self-esteem in your children as well as yourself. The other helps you engage cooperation without having to resort to bribes and stickers and threats and, those kinds of more manipulative, demanding obedience, kinds of approaches. Children will still do what you ask them to do the first time you ask them to do it, but you don't have to resort to any of those other techniques. This particular tool set has 2 out of the 5. It's the only tool set that has more than one, and it's every parent's favorite. The last tool set in the prevention toolbox is the independence tool set. So the final the final tool set in the prevention toolbox is the independence tool set. And that tool set helps you foster independence in your children so that they can be responsible as they gain more freedom through their lives. Then we move on to the problem toolboxes, out of prevention into the problems. The last 5-star tool comes from the child problem toolbox. It's an effective listening and problem-solving process that we call facts listening. And this process helps children learn how to solve their own problems so you can stop getting in, taking over, giving advice, or being a referee for sibling conflicts. And it's also a process that you can use with your child or children or as a family to make decisions and solve problems together in a way that you find win-win solutions. When we move into the parent problem toolbox, we go much more in depth with what we covered today, which is the Keep Your Cool tool set, and that focuses on anger and stress management at the basic level. And only in the online tips class do we go into how to actually eliminate anger and stress from your life, using the content you use today and actually how to reprogram those trigger buttons and eliminate stress and anger from your life. Then the last tool set in that toolbox, in the parent problem toolbox, is the clear communication tool set. And those are tools for how you can express your concerns when there's something that bothers you, how to express those assertively, but yet and effectively, firmly, but kindly, without blame, guilt, or lectures. Then we move into the toolbox that most parents only focus on and don't get all those other skills first or sometimes ever. And that is the misbehavior toolbox. Most parents focus on my kid's misbehaving and I want them to stop. And they dive right into these issues. And not only do they not have all those other skills and concepts and knowledge and a plan to follow, but they also don't really understand what's truly happening when children misbehave. There's a lot of stuff happening under the surface there too. And in the advanced online course, we reveal what that is. And so first, you learn how to prevent unintentional misbehavior. And actually, all misbehavior when it first happens is almost always unintentional. So that can reduce things a lot and make your life much less stressful right there. then when children do misbehave on purpose, you will understand why they are misbehaving that way and how you can redirect that so that they will try to accomplish whatever this purpose is through positive behavior instead of misbehavior. And lastly, we will teach you how to discipline effectively so children learn self-discipline. We don't teach punishment because punishment actually doesn't teach. It actually interferes with teaching, or I should say it interferes with learning. And punishment also will bring on resentment, rebellion, revenge, sneaking and getting away with things. And so we do want, obviously, to hold children accountable for their behavior. And truthfully, once you learn how to discipline instead of punish with the tools that we provide for you, you will realize it's actually holding your children even more accountable than spanking, restrictions, grounding, and timeouts. All four of those, which are the most common discipline tools parents use, not only do they tend to be ineffective based on the way most parents learn to use them, but in some of the cases, they really aren't discipline tools at all and can actually create more problems. So after you have that, then that completes the Universal Blueprint formula. You've got your 5-star tools, you've got your whole plan, and now you are ready to move on to maintenance. And so in the maintenance toolbox, which is the final step, you obviously maintain your progress. You want to be consistent, and we get into, if you have inconsistent parenting partners, how to handle any unhelpful advice that they may give, how to handle criticism or unhelpful advice from others. And this takes everything you've learned from the parenting perspective, bumps it up to the next level, and you get a crash course on how to use the Universal Blueprint in adult relationships. And that is a whole course on Relationship Tool Shop. It's called the first course of using the Universal Blueprint in all your relationships. But you get, it's kind of, that's going to be your next step after you take advanced tips and get everything kind of squared away with your children, because that I'm sure you agree, your children are the most important people in your lives, and nobody else but you can really help them have a really solid, healthy, joyful, emotionally healthy subconscious programming. You're the primary person who's going to influence that. So the key about this is that if you are only, unless you get the whole system, the whole Universal Blueprint system, which is your personalized parenting plan, and if you're missing a piece of that system, in other words, you jump right to discipline, or you just read, or listen to or do a video on just one section of it, you are going to get some very practical tools and you are going to get some results. But if any, you're not going to get the same results you're going to get from using the whole system. If you don't have the tools, you don't know the steps to take, you don't know the questions to ask or how to answer them, or if you get these tools from other places and they don't tell you how to use the tools in the most effective way, or they're not part of a system that helps you decide which tools to use, you're just not going to get the same kind of results that we can guarantee you can get if you take the advanced online course, where you get the entire system and learn how to use it most effectively. So your first step or next step is to attend the Advanced Online Tips course. And that's where you get your parenting plan that you can personalize to your needs, your family, and your family's values. You will get the 5-step formula. It follows that and gives you all those pieces of the formula. And if you do the Advanced Online Tips course, you also will learn how to reprogram cellular memory, how to deactivate those trigger buttons, and you'll also learn how to heal stress and other trauma-related illnesses. That's only available in our advanced courses. Advanced Parents Tool Shop, it's Advanced Online Tips. Relationship Tool Shop, it's the first course. And so you're here for parenting, so we're talking about the Advanced Online Tips course. The Advanced Online Tips course is an evergreen course. In other words, you can get in there, you can watch the videos, which are me doing my live parenting course, read the book, do the program exercises, and you can do the whole thing as a home study. But 2 times a year, I offer a 15-week bonus of live weekly support webinars and calls where you can get on. We will discuss that topic of the week. I'll help you apply it to your personal situation and family. You get personalized coaching, Q&A, clarifications, whatever it is that you need. I will devote 15 weeks to you to make myself available to do that for you. webinar will be recorded. If you can't attend live, and we are scheduling at a time where people around the world can attend. We have people all over the world that want to do this course. So we do have limited seating for the live webinars, the live support webinars. Everybody can get the content, but only the first 30 are going to be able to make it to be a guaranteed spot in the live support webinars. Let me stop the screen sharing because that ends the PowerPoint part of the presentation. There we go. And I'm back to, all right, so let me go ahead and stop the recording and I'll answer questions that you all have. So I'm going to stop the recording, and then after that, I am available to do any personalized problem solving. This is the weekly webinar to do that. So let me just stop the recording.